What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Here, guys, Derek and Cody with you as always. And guys, we wanted to talk about the draft again. I know, more draft talk, but hey, Super Bowl's done. It is officially draft season. Okay, guys, so we got to get going into it. 2.5 more months until that great few days. So let's go ahead and hop into this, guys. We wanted to talk a little bit about that number 15 pick right now, because that is currently where the Indianapolis Colts stand. And I say currently because who knows what the Indianapolis Colts are thinking about that number 15 pick. Cody, what kind of vibe are you getting with this number 15 pick here, and what Indy might decide to do with it?
That's a great question, man. I wish I knew at this point. I guess if I'm thinking about it, I say more likely. I mean, do you trade for? I feel like there's like 4 different possibilities here. Number 1, you stay put. Number 2, you trade up. Number 3, you trade back. Number 4, you trade for a player. So there's so many options that the Colts can do here. I think if I am Chris Ballard and if I am the Colts, I think it kind of depends on, number 1, who's available. Are there any players at premium positions like edge rush or even, a weapon of some sort that you feel like is worth trading the 15th overall pick for? If you say no, okay, no. All right. Well, let's see. Let's kind of see. I think if that's the case, you kind of see how the draft plays out a little bit. I mean, you really see between, the top 10 right around there, and you start getting to picks 11, 12, 13, kind of start to get in your range a little bit, but then you see, who's available. And if there's, one guy in particular that you look at and you say, oh my goodness, this guy is generational. This is a guy we cannot afford to not have on our team. I think that's when you consider trading up. I think that's when you consider giving away. I know that hasn't been really the Colts' mojo in the first round, but you look at that and you say there's a player there where like this guy will change whatever position he's at. He will change our offense or our defense, and he will ultimately be the difference in a lot of different ways. If they find a player there, I'm all for trading up. But also, Derek, if they sit there and they say, we're going to get one of these guys, so we might as well just stay put. Right. So say there's a couple different guys. There's a receiver or 2. There's a few pass rushers. Maybe Brock Bowers is still there. There's a lot of guys there. And the Colts are like, okay, like we're sitting there with at pick number 12 and, we're a couple picks away. One of these guys is going to fall to us. They're all virtually the same for us. We're good with sitting where we're at. Or even, Derek, if it's to the point where they, pick 15, the Colts are on the clock, and there's like 3 or 4 guys they really, really like and they have very similar grades on, wouldn't be surprised at all, man, if the Colts traded back. I mean, that's exactly what they did a year ago with the Julius Brents draft pick. I mean, the Colts were at the top of the second round. If you remember, they traded back and they still got Julius Brents in addition to a couple more picks. And so there's a ton of scenarios here that the Colts could go. I think for me personally, I start with seeing who's out there. I start seeing which potential, veteran, quote unquote, is out there at a position that you're looking for and looking to seriously upgrade. And I start there. And if it doesn't get to that point and you don't really find anybody or you can't agree on the compensation, then I think you move towards the draft and then you just let it play out kind of a little bit.
Main thing I think about is obviously it comes to free agency. What exactly are you going to do with that? And you and I have discussed the option of trading that number 15 pick for either an elite weapon or an elite edge. I would most likely suggest the idea that they probably won't do that. Now, of course, with Indy being in the situation that they're in, they look at this draft and say, you got a ton of corner help. You got a ton of receiver help at this particular draft. So you look at that and say, with this 15th overall pick, you may potentially not want to use that pick for said positions unless, like you said, there's an elite weapon that shows its hand early in the draft that is falling that you think you could get there. Now, I am more inclined to see the latter, that with Shane Steichen as the head coach, that if he has a player that is on his draft board and he tells Chris Ballard enough times that, hey, like, this is the guy, like, if he falls to like number 10, trade up to get him. And I don't know who that player would be. I mean, honestly, I could really only think of one, and that's Brock Bowers. I really think that's the only one, because I don't see a scenario in which Malik Neighbors falls into the tens. I don't really see that as a likely possibility. Even Odunzen, I don't know if he is as big on Steichen's board for that as Bowers, but I would look at it and say I'm more inclined for them to trade up if Brock Bowers is seeping into the tens. And for as far as that, if Bowers stays at, if he ends up getting drafted early and then Neighbors and Adunze end up getting drafted early, then I think that Indianapolis stays at 15 to try and draft corner help. That's just my personal opinion on that. When it comes to a situation in which they trade back, only if the corners are falling, as in like two or three of the top like 5 corners in this draft are falling, and then nobody's taking them inside the top 15. Like if they're doing that, then I see that situation happening. But outside of that, I don't see a scenario where they trade back. I mean, I'm more inclined to say go stay right where you're at 15 and just pick the best available player. But that's only if the top wide receivers and Brock Bowers are taken off of the draft board before 10.
Right. I have a kind of a weird scenario, and I don't know if this will actually happen, but like, say one of those quarterbacks starts falling a little bit, right? Say one of those quarterbacks somehow magically gets into around 15. Could a team, that's really desperate for a quarterback, could they trade up? Could they potentially say, "Hey, Indy, we want that pick. Here are some, a slew of other picks, like, and whatever they would throw in there." Could that be a scenario where the Colts would potentially, look at that and say, "Hey, we could get a haul for this, and still be able to get one of our guys," especially if it's, in the 20s or something like that, or wherever it would be, or the late teens or something like that. Indy could get a little bit more while still staying within striking range of getting one of their guys. Again, if some of those top players are off the board at that point, I could see that happening as well, Derek. If one of these guys, we've seen it before, one of these quarterbacks starts falling a bit and a team's like, we got to get this guy and we'll do whatever it takes to get this guy. We've seen teams be aggressive like that. So that could be a scenario. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I could see that very likely being a scenario if that does happen.
We have talked about it so many times where, the Indy has an opportunity to, really go over the top with this draft opportunity. And who knows if somebody is, wanting to, and I would love that if somebody in the late teens or in the early 20s legitimately needs to trade up to get a quarterback, which, I mean, I don't know how many of them actually would at that spot, because that's a very rare thing for a team to take a quarterback that late in the first round if they didn't absolutely need it. Nonetheless, to trade up for it. But like you said,
It's happened though. I mean, you think of Lamar Jackson,
and the good
traded up
thing
for
with
him.
that argument is with how many different quarterbacks have made a good impression on a lot of different teams. We talk about Caleb Williams. We talk about Drake May. We talk about Jaden Daniels. Talk about Michael Penix, Bo Nix. JJ McCarthy apparently now is a bona fide first round quarterback.
Drake May as well.
Drake May. We got 6 guys legitimately that could be first round quarterbacks if you look all the way across the board. So if somebody is willing to say, hey, like take our second this year and our third next year for that, I wouldn't put it past Ballard to be like, hey, yeah, I'll move back 5 or 6 spots if that means I get an extra 2 picks on top of it, and still feel good about the chances of getting a guy that we actually want. That definitely could be.
Yep, absolutely. So will be interesting, Dan, to see kind of how this plays out. Lots of different scenarios here for the Colts. And could they potentially, trade up for a guy? Could they trade back? Could they stay put? Could they get a guy, that's a little bit more of an older veteran? Like, could they go get, that route and get an impact player at one of those positions? Will be interesting to see, Derek. But guys, let us know your thoughts overall here on the Colts and all these different scenarios they could find themselves in on draft day or even before draft day. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, but that'll do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, guys, go Colts.